Haha! Now audio is on. Good evening, everyone. We're back. This is Jason with Phase Shift Games.
And Scott Smith, designer of Dungeon Drop and Drop Drive.
Now imagine that we did that perfectly the first time. So thanks for coming back and joining us again, Scott, and thank you to everyone else who's joined. So this week, got a couple improvements. We've got a Skype stream that's now, I think, exactly right, so you should be hearing Scott crystal clear. Last week, I didn't realize this, but it was going out my speakers and then coming back in through the microphone over the air in my room, and that's how we heard Scott, and so he was like faint and muffled a bit. So anyway, we should be in great shape for this evening. We have another great topic, but let me just recap what we're doing here on these live stream sessions. So this is all about Drop Drive, which is our upcoming game. Around September, October, you'll see information about a Kickstarter. And what we're doing is picking a different topic each week or every other week or whatever period of time. Right now it's been weekly, we'll see. And we're kind of picking apart different aspects of the game because there really is so much to explore in Drop Drive. And so this week, we're going to talk about the play area and interactables. And there's a whole lot going on in the play area. Last week was more of an overall introduction, so if you missed that live stream is available. You can watch it on Facebook, you can watch it on YouTube, or on Twitch. But without further ado, let's get into tonight's topic. And first, I'll my drink of choice tonight. I've got a Glenfiddich 12, so that's a nice drop here. I love celebrating these live streams as we get closer. It's just so awesome. We've been working on this game for so long, Scott, right?
Yeah. And we're in this last phase has been sort of a design grind of the end stage. So it's been a haul of a lot of just trying to streamline some things and a lot of reprinting out of Explore cards, but it's all good, and I know it's going to lead us to our perfect final product.
Yes, we are definitely. It's so great. Scott and I both played prototype games earlier today, not with each other. We live in different states, but just happened to be playing prototype games and comparing notes. And every time we play a game, we make these just, incremental improvements, or it overall just feels like it's really narrowing in on that sublime, sweet kind of nexus of where we want everything coming together. The richness of the gameplay, the simplicity and the accessibility of the rules. It's feeling so good.
And you just make it sound like a really smooth process.
It's so easy! Anyone can do it!
It's almost always like that. Every once in a while, a little step back somewhere, but we get there.
All right, so play area. So the first question, Scott, that I want to pose to you, and obviously, folks, these are canned questions. I know the answer. But, Scott, in Dungeon Drop, we like to tout and push the idea that you can play Dungeon Drop on any play surface. Any table. You could even play it on a floor. You can play it on a carpet. Doesn't matter. Do we say the same thing about Drop Drive? What's similar and what's different about Drop Drive in terms of the play area?
I mean, this is one of the obvious. It's going to be one of the most obvious link between Drop Drive and Dungeon Drop is the play space in some ways, although it's going to be also the first place that people see some differences. It's also can be played in a variety of spaces. I remember one of the really early people that took a look at the game was one of my favorite descriptions of it was I think he called it like Dungeon Marbles, which was really kind of, it just made me think about it. I think that might have been the Unfiltered Gamer or somebody, but anyway, it can technically, even though we've built all these beautiful places to play it in our gorgeous dungeon mat and everything, technically you can just throw it on a bed sheet or anything,
Dungeon Drop.
And that holds true for this game. I mean, it is the link. It's the reason why they both have that drop in their title. It can go anywhere. However, there's sort of an organization that starts to emerge that's a little different in this centric system on kind of a center of the sun. We'll probably talk a little bit about that today, and then of course just what's in it.
Yeah, yeah. So I think there's a key distinction with Dungeon Drop. So we made the mats and the walls available, but technically they're not required to play. You can play Dungeon Drop truly on any surface. Where here, and I think the piece that I was trying to tee up here, but maybe I wasn't clear enough in the way I posed the question.
Okay.
Here with Drop Drive, the space containment is more important, right?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Mhm.
So you kind of need that defined area, and it needs to be of a roughly equal size. And I think that's a key distinction people are going to see.
Sure. Yeah. So this will get into, we've had some very precise talks about the walls already for this game. Of course, bringing walls to space is it's an interesting topic, but we'll come up with a name for them, I'm sure. But the play space, because of a future topic we'll get into, of course, which is how you navigate in this space. The exact dimensions of this space become something that didn't really exist to the same degree in Dungeon Drop. However, I have played it many a time, in testing, even without the walls, even though they will be part of the final product, where it's possible to play the game. But there is a ideal play space that we're really aiming for with this one.
So I threw up a slideshow. If you're watching on the Facebook side, Scott, you'll see it too. So just a kind of a slideshow of a bunch of prototype pictures from Scott and my various play sessions. So you're going to see there's different tables. Scott's obviously on some kind of a wooden table. And in these pictures, actually not playing with any kind of walls. Although I have seen you play with the curvy walls that you have.
Well, I take them away.
You take them away after you drop. Got it. On my table, you're going to see in the pictures a Dungeon Drop mat and Dungeon Drop style walls. You'll also notice that they're not straight corners in some of the pictures. They're like jaggedy to make it feel more space-like oblong and such. But anyway, point is, these are prototype pictures that you're seeing, so clearly we're not going to expect you to play Drop Drive on a Dungeon Drop mat and set of walls. We're going to have specialty printed components for all that stuff. But okay, so people are starting to get they're able to see this sun in the middle and these large cubes, which at least for a prototype represent planets, but those will even be more kind of identifiable shapes and such in the final. And then along the side in the picture that's there now, you can see that there are those planet tiles. So we just wanted to start giving a sense, and again, each week we're going to dive into some of these different aspects, like the markets on the planets and how they work and so on. So we've already talked about the play area and how it's kind of defined, and that definition is more important here. So what's inside this defined area, Scott? What are all the different components in the solar system? What are all the things we're going to encounter here on the table?
Really what you see in any of those prototype shots are really what we sort of consider the core of the game. We have some fun ideas brewing about some ways to stretch kind of what we're doing in this space. But the core of the game, you're seeing planets. It's going to be a really exciting discussion, actually, to really come up with the final of how the planets will look. But they'll obviously be the largest item in the play space, and even their shape. You're seeing like big cubes here, which they could add. We have some ideas for how that could work out for us, but they don't have to be. And this is again one of the big differences here between Dungeon Drop and Drop Drive. We could end up with planets, say that's we're more like a 12-sided dice or something like that, that has a sort of more of a rounded look to it. But they'll definitely, no matter what they are, they're going to kind of loom up in the play space. They're the obvious targets and kind of the center of the play. Landing at a planet is really when you take a lot of special actions that really are the heart of the game. After you've gone on little adventures out in the system. Then you've got asteroids, which are of all different colors. Right now, they're just pretty simple, kind of those plastic crystals of different types, but again, a new shape to bring to kind of our style of game. They bounce in all kinds of unpredictable ways, just like the cubes. And it's just a natural shape that looks like an asteroid, which is cool right out of the gate. Although, again, we have cool ideas about how to further differentiate those things in the final product. You're going to see spaceship tokens, of course. Right now, they're nothing but like a wooden disc. Really interestingly, in Drop Drive, you will have to drop those spaceships out of kind of hyperspace, and we've said this all the way along, that the final version will not be rounded discs, because when you drop something like that to the table, there's a little chance that they're going to roll on their side. So we're definite that the final tokens for the spaceships will have more like a hexagon shape or a pentagon or something like that, and they'll, I'm sure, have nice little spaceship pictures as well. We also have hulks, which are these kind of pieces of abandoned space salvage, maybe previously destroyed ships, things like that, that can be explored, and actually kind of pieces taken aboard your ship. And occasionally a pirate makes its appearance, also a different type of ship token, but it's not controlled by a player. Kind of functions in the system according to really basic rules, so that it actually moves around by itself. We kind of brainstormed some of that initial thinking with the Dungeon Drop expansion, and how the huge monsters kind of have a little life in the dungeon themselves, and the pirates are definitely kind of tied to that thinking. But the players right now, they trigger that movement depending on the actions they take in space. And then you got the big sun, which you could see in Jason's version. It's like
it's a very big plastic sun
orb. I don't know where you found that thing, cut in half. In mine, it's a flat disc, so you'll see that, and I'm sure they're already behaving in slightly different ways, but really importantly, that becomes the big redrop target in this game, which is another thing that is a little different than Dungeon Drop.
So I want to hit on something you mentioned with the discs for the ships. Now, we haven't fully planned out our stretch goals for the Kickstarter and deluxe versus non-deluxe and all that. Rest assured, there's gonna be some pretty awesome options for things like the ships. And I just really want to reinforce this point, that this is one of the key differences between Dungeon Drop and Drop Drive. Dungeon Drop is referred to a lot of times as an abstract game, because everything is a cube, even things that wouldn't normally look like a cube. Now, we pulled that into the artwork and made everything look like cubicle treasure chests and cubicle goblins and such, and that was fun, and that adds to the charm of the game. Drop Drive does not have that requirement. We don't need to have components be the same. So when we say the ships could be the hexagonal shape, that's one option. They could be any shape. I mean, we literally could have 3D ships. I don't know if we're going to go so far as molded models, but even wooden ships can be in different shapes that are unique. So there's a lot of options, and we're going to really have some fun working with each other, and then with you all, the community, to figure out those options.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see that happen, and I'm a little hesitant to talk about it because I know there's slightly different directions we might go, but it continues to be something cool about this type of model, where these different shapes, they behave in a very physical way. just due to kind of the drop system, right? That something's landing into this space, and I love the idea that even though essentially, they all randomize a little bit, when they drop. But anyone who's played Dungeon Drop realizes that even a simple cube, there's just no way to predict really how it falls. These shapes will be no different, and yet their behavior is tied to their shape just a little bit, and that's always something that's kind of cool.
So as I'm going to see if I can pause the slideshow at one of the pictures coming up in just a second. There it is. So I think I just paused it. We'll see if that works. So that's my wife, Jolene. Hey, Jolene. Oh, she can't say hey because she's a picture. But she's holding something, Scott. Now we're going to deep dive into this topic because this is such a cool, unique, magical aspect of Drop Drive. But why don't you give folks a high level of what she's holding there and how ships navigate in this universe?
Yeah, so I mentioned that you can come in and out of quote-unquote, Drop Drive, which is an element of the game, and we'll talk about that later. But once you do land in this space, you use that thing, the nav tool, as we're calling it right now, to carve a path through the space, right? And this is one of the absolute biggest differences between the two games, right? In Dungeon Drop, you didn't move around. You picked pillars, you formed that room space, and that's sort of where you were. But here, you're going to be picking that magical tool up and very much using it to guide your ship, kind of chart a little flight path through the space and encounter different things on the way. It's another very spatial element, and I know I'm excited to give people a peek into, we got a guy working to design this for us right now, and it's a totally unique little product, and it's super cool to see him showing us little, with like a 3D printer, how these pieces can be made. So this is all unfolding right now, but you are going to move your ship sort of along the path that's created by that tool, and it determines where you can go and what you encounter.
And that's not just people can't see it here because we're going to spend a lot of time on a subsequent session talking about it. We'll give you close-up pictures and probably some videos of that tool in action. It's not just a hard plastic piece. There's movement, there's components that's going on. And the guy that you mentioned, I'm glad you brought him up, is somebody who's worked in this industry on some pretty big projects, such as this little known project called not Forbidden Island, Fireball Island. So, not for nothing, but we're pulling out all the stops here, and we're coming up with some pretty awesome stuff. Hey, Fiznet and Craig and Judy, thanks for watching along. If anyone has any questions, post them in the chat anytime. We're watching live, so we will be happy to answer anything. All right, so more on that nav tool. Do we have a definite name for it? We just call it the nav tool.
We are calling it the nav tool right now. It's always interesting to see how that begins to take on a little life of its own. There's certain things I've been dead set in the beginning, certain names of calling things like the specimens. But this is a definition of that tool is still a little bit undecided. I wonder if maybe through some of the future play testing and stuff, our final name will kind of emerge.
Someone will come up with some clever new, name that's never been thought of, maybe. Well, what did you come up with for the specimens? You came up with a weight, a unit of weight in this future universe. Gravitrons?
I just...
Gravitons?
Yeah, I think I might have pitched you 3 different names, but they all involve something with the GV abbreviation, and I like using gravity as sort of
I love it.
So I think that's what we're going to go with in some form. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so So you mentioned the sun. Let me unpause this and let's see if we can get back to my awesome plastic sun. So by the way, where that came from was a planetarium kit that I bought at like Michael's Crafters. Right. It was like a toy kit of planets, but I just thought it was cool to have these halves that I could. And they actually form together to make a whole, and then you hang it on a mobile. But I don't do that because I've used them in other prototypes in the past. But let me get back to that. I think I can actually advance. There we go. All right, so now I paused it on the giant yellow sun in the center of my my universe here. Why is that sun important? So you mentioned it's the focal point of redropping stuff. Why is that important in this game?
Well, yeah, so in Dungeon Drop, redropping stuff happens a lot. You know, there's some flexibility in that game. You know, we have limits. It has to be dropped kind of within the dungeon space, but there's some decision on the part of the player about where it goes. You know, this is a difference in this game because it's really targeted. Like most of the stuff that you redrop, it gets redropped over the sun, that center point. You know, in one way, it's cleaner in some ways because there is this exact space. You never have to kind of think about it. It just goes right there on top of the sun, the middle, and spreads out from there. So like the sun's a really interesting example actually of kind of like the unique design space that we get into, right? The final design of the sun, because it is this thing that everything gets dropped on, is important. You know, its exact shape, you know, like if we were to go with a flat disc like mine, you know, that's the thing that's most equivalent to hit an object hitting a flat tabletop and moving from there. Whereas something rounded, and then the question, like Jason's like has exaggerated the rounding. We do that full half sphere, but it could also be something that was in between, you know. And the more rounded that top is, it might kind of fire that object out, you know, kind of at different speeds, might be more or less likely to spread the system out farther. So this is the kind of interesting play space that you know, as we test, we're trying to figure out exactly what works best. Also because you chart a path through space. This is the center point. You know, things can cluster a little bit in the middle. Anyone who, again, has played Dungeon Drop knows that when you drop things. But the sun is you can't move through it. So it does kind of present that also that kind of core obstacle in the center of the space as well.
So I'll make two comments. First off, everyone that I played with, it always elicits a fun reaction. People love just dropping on this and seeing them clink out, you know, from the center of the universe here, or the solar system. And the second point, you said something just interesting right now that I hadn't really occurred to me. It's easier to think about. In Dungeon Drop, there are times where you want to strategize. Where am I going to redrop these things or drop this new set of exploration cubes? That's part of the game intentionally. But there's less choices in Dungeon Drop compared to what we're calling this a sandbox game, where you have so many choices. You go any direction, carry on any particular mission that you want, go after victory points in whatever way you want. And so you're thinking a lot about your character, your ship, and your missions and your quests and so on. So this is one less general thing that you have to worry about thinking about. It's just drop them in the center.
Yep. So it's the difference. Yep.
I think that's a great one. Fizna has a question. What if... I can see where this is going already. What if some clumsy Carl knocks the sun in a different place? I don't think that matters. I mean, you're going to drop things in this universe, and things are going to get bumped around. It doesn't happen nearly as much as Dungeon Drop, and it's not nearly as problematic or impactful to the game as in Dungeon Drop.
The exact placement of the pillar cubes in Dungeon Drop is so important. You know, I mean, it's what led to us eventually, you know, due to, I think, the demand of a play style, producing the stringy thingy. where people wanted to be very sure about exact lines in there as you form that room. There is a kind of precision in this game as well, although it comes most from that nav tool we're talking about. There's where that kind of careful measurement takes place in a way. But the system itself, the exact positioning of things has a different feel to it for sure.
And Scott, what do you think about, like, okay, so it's a randomized solar system or galaxy, however we think of it. What does it matter? So in Dungeon Drop, in the early days when we were designing and going through those designs, you were designing, we were going through them. One of the concerns was like when you have a bad drop, and how do we mitigate a bad drop? And is it a problem? Do we need rules to control things like that? We grappled with in those early days. Yeah. What happens here when planets they all happen to land, let's say, on one side of the sun, and crystals are on the other side? Is this a problem? What's the deal?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there's no question that was, boy, wow, talk about something we talked a lot about, Dungeons. It eventually led to a lot of the powers, the special powers in the game that were designed to mitigate quote-unquote bad drops, which essentially what we're talking about. It's not necessarily bad, it's just clusters of stuff that get tough to navigate. And then, some of the players' special abilities become really important, being able to count a type of cube as a pillar that wasn't really originally a pillar, that type of thing. But again, it's like every problem can lead you to really interesting design space. I mean, I think that's what ended up happening with Dungeon Drop. The solutions became really fascinating and, gave the characters their life in the game. Here, I think we're going to have, the sun itself is going to mitigate this a little bit. If it has the ability to kind of spread and divide the center, that immediately kind of takes care of a few of our types of challenges. Also, things like all the planets landing on one side isn't necessarily bad in this game. You don't have pillars, so the game is played in such a different way that it's not the same kind of problem. In fact, it could become a really interesting part of this solar system you've dropped into, that the planets are more on one side and you have to kind of venture into the other half of the board and kind of return to the other half, which actually would raise all sorts of interesting questions about how you use your drop drive, which is your big ability to move large distances quickly.
And which ship upgrades might be more valuable in this game versus another game. That's what I've personally found, and what I think is awesome is just like Freelancer, the games you and I go way back with that we both loved, Freelancer, Wing Commander Privateer, and a bunch of others that it can be anything. It's a procedurally generated universe, and it doesn't matter. It's just going to change your dynamics and how you go about this particular universe in this game and how you want to play it.
Yeah, another great example would be something like a whole bunch of let's say that the water asteroids, the asteroids that have water on them, land in a certain area of the board. That is really fascinating in this game. There might be a planet market that really those are in high demand, and then how to use all of our tools at your disposal. How big is your cargo? Is that a good target for you? There's all kinds of really interesting questions that I think we count on the randomization of this game to actually make it tick, rather than seeing it most of the time as a potential flaw. And this hasn't come up nearly as many times, like the need to manipulate this space with special powers in the design of Drop Drive. It's definitely a different animal.
In fact, at the moment, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't even have any flicking powers, I don't think. We had a couple.
Waiting on this comment to come up until we were in the nav tool for conversation, but it can come now. Yes, that is correct. There, as of this moment, and I I'm only saying this moment as we design the core of the game. There is currently no flicking of anything. We are a spatial game. There is the physical nature of dropping things, but beyond that, it is not technically a dexterity game at all in terms of how you play.
Yeah. Now, for those who love the flicking in Dungeon Drop, because our community has a lot of love for the flick effects, we absolutely. First of all, there were flick effects in the past. We just, I guess, I didn't even realize it until I just said it, that you've actually weeded those out over the months. But I'm certain that some of our weird things that are on the horizon, anomalies and stuff like that we have yet to play with, might add some interesting things like that.
There's no question. We've talked about a lot of possibilities. Even, could there hypothetically someday be a new type of engine that functions by flicking? It's not the core game. It's not what we've designed, but there's possibilities for all kinds of things if we want to go there.
Well, Fiznet and you just overlapped at the precise moment by saying no hyperspace flicking, because that was one of your ideas, I think, was a hyperspace.
Actually, in a much earlier version of the game, that was a version I tried of the drop drive, was just flicking. That's hyperspace too, right? It's kind of unpredictable. You just flick your ship and it goes off, and you do the best that you can. But we've evolved it into a different space where currently that's not the way the drive works. It doesn't depend on that type of pure dexterity skill, which you're just going to have to play to see how that's different.
So, Craig wants to know when he can start throwing money at us. Thank you, Craig. We love you. September, look for announcements as we approach September. September is when con season starts back up for us. We got Gen Con in September, Essen in October, and PAX Unplugged in December, if all goes well, and if the world continues on the upward trajectory that we seem to be on with the virus. So, the good news is that strewn in those cons, we're gonna have a lot of presence with the public, and we're gonna have prototypes of this there to show off, and hopefully the campaign will be going right alongside one or more of those cons. So that's the time frame that we're looking. Let's see, I had two things that I wanted to say. So one, I wanted to ask about so I guess I'll start with this and then try to remember what my other thing was. So Scott, there are these games called miniature war games, and miniature war games are spatial, just like what we're talking about here, and they have models, and you use a ruler and you measure where the model goes from and to. So there's a lot of similarities in one way. Is this a miniatures / war game like those? How would we compare this to those?
Well, I mean, I think you're talking about the overlap of that kind of spatial overlap, but as of right now, war is that's not what this game is about at all. I'll just throw out on the side, I mean, gosh, we have endless conversations about what you could do with the system. Could there be, we've had some ideas for game modes that bring some more direct player interaction in. However, this game is definitely not a battling game. It's a war of kind of more of economics, of this exploration to see who can...
Privateering.
Well, economics, I mean, that's maybe the wrong word, but, the points in this game are credits. You're trying to become kind of the wealthiest person in the system. Obviously, you can acquire that wealth in all kinds of different ways. But it's about that. It's about exploring and trading, and the closest thing we have right now, there is a battle element, but it is currently not between the players directly. It's these pirates, so I should of course mention that. So these pirates get launched out when you visit a planet. They sort of start there, and they get launched out into the space, And like I said earlier, they move around according to particular rules, and they're kind of going about their business, maybe gobbling up asteroids from the system that are valuable and kind of hoarding it onto their own ship and stuff. And you can take these guys down. They accumulate sort of bounty, and the longer you leave them in the system, the more valuable they become in different ways. They don't all function in the same way, but like for example, one might be gathering up a variety of specimens around the system, and depending on the state of your ship and what you're doing, it might be particularly juicy target for you to try to track down that pirate and actually have a brief battle with it to see if you can kind of acquire some stuff that way. I don't know if I'm doing all that right.
Absolutely. I think another key distinction between us and miniature games or war games is the level of time investment, the level of hobby investment. Totally different. Ours is not meant to be a miniature war game that takes 90 minutes to 180 minutes to play, right? It's a fraction of the time, and it's all in this cute little box. It's not a hobby in and of itself that costs you thousands of dollars and you're painting miniatures and so on. Totally different scale. But the elements, there are elements of overlap though, like as we've mentioned. Fiznet wants to know, what if he wants to be a pirate? I'm sorry, Fiznet, he, she, I don't know your gender, but what if they want to be a pirate?
The funny thing is, essentially, you do become a sort of pirate. I mean, if that's what you're doing, if you're, you're tracking down these guys. I mean, I suppose you're operating in. I suppose you could call it like you're doing good deeds for the system because you do collect a sort of bounty by taking down these pirates. However, you ultimately are accumulating your stuff by kind of blowing these guys out of the sky and taking what they happen to have on board. So, the trick, I guess it comes down to the tricky definition of what you call yourself. A kind of rogue agent of the law, a pirate, I think you can kind of define yourself however you like.
And like you said, Scott, there have been ideas that you've had for maybe a module that gets added on, some expansion or something that maybe adds more PvP, player versus player interaction, where maybe you can actually go around attacking other players. Maybe not the core intended game mode, but for those who like that kind of more cutthroat style, that might be an option.
But I think we're as a little company, we're kind of all a little bit on the same page about this, that it's generally not the first place we go that kind of take that place for design. I think we all really enjoy being able to carefully build a plan, whether that's fully strategic or tactical or some sort of mix of the two, and really get the rewards of feeling that kind of come to fruition, which can really happen in this game when a bunch of things line up together. It can be a very unfun experience to have like everything lining up and then somebody else swoops in and throws off that key element that was going to be so beautiful. So it's something we're definitely going to consider all the way through, and we want to produce a core game for people that like us are not really always in that take that mood, that they can still really enjoy this game without that kind of battle element.
Awesome. Well, Craig's got his fingers crossed for us. Fiznet, can't wait to play it. Awesome. We can't wait for everyone to play it. Scott, any last thoughts on the play surface, play area, components, interactables? Obviously, we'll deep dive into planet markets and specimens and how they all work and everything separately. I guess my last thought, I am still super excited to see. I know you guys are seeing the prototype images, but every step forward we make with the look of this game, it just gets, because it's a very tactile thing, and the system is made up of very physical pieces.
that every little advance we make with this just makes it so much more fun to see and to be in this little world. So I'm just super excited to see how this play space continues to evolve from kind of the core mechanical system we've built.
Amen. So I'll give you a glimpse into the next in the series. So next time we meet, we're going to really dive into ship movement. And we're going to show you those tools. We're going to show you close-ups. We're going to show you the evolution of the tool, which began with, what was the first version, Scott?
String.
It's a string.
Oh, yeah. I've loved my string for a long time, so...
In fact, if you could make sure to bring your...
Oh, I'll have my string.
If you have it, good. So we can show people. But it's really gone through different evolutions. And, I mean, the CAD drawings that we've seen from this cat that's working on it, I mean, really intricate work going into this. So we're really going to show you behind the curtain on the nav tool, talk about the different ship movements. There's really 3 different ship types of movements. There's the drop drive and the rocket drive, and then pirate ship movement all work a little different. So we're going to deep dive into that next time. It looks like there's no last questions here, so I want to thank everyone for joining us yet again. There's much more to come. We really still are just scratching the surface of the sun. So thanks so much. Jason from Phase Shift Games here with Scott. Thank you again, and we'll talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.